everybody, and welcome back for Pre-K Art Day here at the Living Arts and Science Center. My name is Miss Anna, and today we're going to be reading a really special story. It's called Corduroy, and this book I think is really cool because it's been around for more than 50 years, which is a really long time. I would bet that some of the grown-ups in your life have heard this story and maybe even heard it when they were kids. So let's head over to our story spot and check it out. Corduroy by Don Freeman. Corduroy is a bear who once lived in the toy department of a big store. Day after day, he waited with all the other animals and dolls for somebody to come along and take him home. The store was always filled with shoppers buying all sorts of things, but no one ever seemed to want a small bear in green overalls. Then one morning, a little girl stopped and looked straight into Corduroy's bright eyes. "Oh, Mommy," she said, "look, there's the very bear I've always wanted." "Not today, dear," her mother sighed. "I've spent too much already. Besides, he doesn't look new. He's lost the buttons to one of his shoulder straps." Corduroy watched them sadly as they walked away. "I didn't know I'd lost my button," he said to himself. "Tonight I'll go see if I can find it." Late that evening, when all the shoppers had gone and the doors were shut and locked, Corduroy climbed carefully down from his shelf and began searching everywhere on the floor for his lost button. Suddenly, he felt the floor moving under him. Quite by accident, he had stepped onto an escalator, and up he went. Could this be a mountain, he wondered? I think I've always wanted to climb a mountain. He stepped off the escalator as it reached the next floor, and there, before his eyes, was a most amazing sight. Tables and chairs and lamps and sofas and rows of beds. "This must be a palace," Corduroy gasped. "I guess I've always wanted to live in a palace." He wandered around, admiring the furniture. "This must be a bed," he said. "I've always wanted to sleep in a bed." And up he crawled onto a large, thick mattress. All at once he saw something small and round. "Why, here's my button," he cried, and he tried to pick it up. But, like all the other buttons on the mattress, it was tied down tight. He yanked and pulled with both paws until pop! Off came the button, and off the mattress Corduroy toppled. Bang into a tall floor lamp. Over it fell with a crash. Corduroy didn't know it, but there was someone else awake in the store. The night watchman was going his rounds on the floor above. When he heard the crash, he came dashing down the escalator. "Now who in the world did that?" he exclaimed. "Somebody must be hiding around here." He flashed his light under and over sofas and beds until he came to the biggest bed of all. And there he saw two fuzzy brown ears sticking up from under the covers. "Hello," he said. "How did you get upstairs?" The watchman tucked Corduroy under his arm and carried him down the escalator and set him on the shelf in the toy department with the other animals and dolls. Corduroy was just waking up when the first customers came into the store in the morning, and there, looking at him with a wide, warm smile, was the same little girl he'd seen only the day before. I'm Lisa, she said, and you're going to be my very own bear. Last night I counted what I've saved in my piggy bank, and my mother said I could bring you home. Shall I put him in a box for you? The saleslady asked. Oh, no thank you, Lisa answered, and she carried Corduroy home in her arms. She ran all the way up 4 flights of stairs into her family's apartment and straight into her own room. Corduroy blinked. There was a chair and a chest of drawers, and alongside a girl-sized bed stood a little bed just the right size for him. The room was small, nothing like that enormous palace in the department store. This must be home, he said. I know I've always wanted a home. Lisa sat down with Corduroy on her lap and began to sew a button on his overalls. I like you the way you are, she said, but you'll be more comfortable with your shoulder strap fastened. You must be a friend, said Corduroy. I've always wanted a friend. Me too, said Lisa, and gave him a big hug. The end. Wasn't that a special story? I really love the part where she says that she likes Corduroy just the way he is, even though he's missing his buttons, and he was so worried about it throughout the whole book. I think it's so sweet. So let's head over to our craft table and make our very own version of Corduroy. All right, so today we're going to be making our very own version of Corduroy the bear. I'm very excited about this because we are going to be making something called a tear bear. Now, the supplies that you're going to need for this, you're going to need some green, black, and brown construction paper, some liquid glue, a pencil, and some buttons. I have some scissors here, but if you don't have any scissors, it's actually okay because we are going to be tearing our paper instead of cutting it today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why we're doing that. That is going to make the edges of our bear look really fluffy and cool. It's going to make him look like he's soft. So I'm going to show you how we're going to go about that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to set aside our green and black paper, and we're going to start just working on our brown paper. So the first thing I'm going to do is use my pencil, and I'm going to start drawing the shape of my bear. So first thing I'm going to do is draw a circle for my bear's head. Now you want to make your circle not too big because you need to leave room for your bear's body. So we've drawn our circle. And then I'm going to draw 2 smaller circles. These are going to become my bear's ears. You remember that part in our story where the bear's ears were sticking up over the covers? So you want to make sure that those circles are big enough so that they are the right size for Corduroy. And now we're going to draw a slightly bigger circle, a little bit bigger than our head, for our bear's body. And now, what is our bear missing? Our bear is still missing his legs and his arms, right? So for those, we're going to draw kind of like a U shape. One on both sides. Kind of like a U with a line that connects the 2 top parts of your U. And we're going to do the same thing for our feet. Actually, for our feet, I think I'm going to make my U a little bit wider. Just like this. So I'm going to flip this around so we can get a good look at it. This is what you're going to want to draw on your paper. Now, I think this would be a good time to pause your video. If you need to take some time to draw your shapes, take a minute, just pause your video, try and copy what I've done here on my paper. But after you've finished drawing out the shape of your bear, the next thing we need to do is we need to start tearing. So what I like to do to make this a little bit easier is rip around each section that I drew so that they're a little bit easier to tear out. See how I just ripped around that one part? And the best way I can tell you to try tearing is if you put your hand flat on your paper like this. So see, maybe I want to tear right this way around my foot. If I put my hand flat and then I use my other hand to pull my paper up, that's the best way to control how your paper tears. So if you're having trouble with this, have a grown-up help you. But I would bet if you practice a little bit, you'll get the hang of it much faster than you think you will. So see how I'm using my hand to guide so that I don't accidentally tear into my shapes that I drew. I'm tearing around each of those shapes that I made just to get started. Do you see how this is making a fuzzy edge? Once we actually tear around the lines that we made, it's going to make our bear look like he's really soft and cuddly, which is kind of what we're going for. So I'm going to keep tearing, and I'm guiding with my hand. Some of you guys might hear my kitties in the background. They're upset because I'm not paying attention to them. All right, so I've torn around all of my paper, and now I have to actually tear around each shape. Doing it this way, where you kind of separate all of your pieces first, it just makes things easier when you're tearing. It makes it less likely that you'll accidentally rip into one of the shapes that you drew. So now, just like I was telling you before, I have my line here, and to try and make my paper rip in the right places, I'm gonna place my left hand, because I'm right-handed, place my left hand right up against that line, and then I'm gonna tear with my other hand really slowly. And I'm gonna kind of just move all the way around. And if you don't go exactly on those lines that you drew, don't worry. Because you remember how in the last few weeks when we've done some crafts together, I've told you guys that you can kind of make your artwork look really neat by using the side that you didn't draw on. So see, on this side, I've got my lines, my pencil lines, and you can kind of see them. But if I flip it over, now those pencil lines are gone and I've just got my finished shape. So there's one of them I'm all done with. Now I'm going to do the rest of these, and hopefully I can speed this up so that you don't have to sit through me tearing. But we're going to use the same technique that I just showed you, where I put my hand flat and I try to rip around those lines that I made the best that I can. But remember, you don't have to worry about being super neat because you want to have a rough, fluffy edge. Okay, so now I've got all the parts of my bear torn and they're ready to go. Now my black piece of paper is going to become my background. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start putting all of these things on my background and kind of just laying them out so I can kind of build the body of my bear. So I've got my head here. I've got, let's see. And remember, all those sides with the lines, you want to put those down. So I have some I need to flip over. So start making my bear. Let's see. There's one ear. And there's another ear. And an arm. And my feet. So you can see already, I haven't glued anything down yet, but it does kind of look like a bear already. We still need to make our bear corduroy though. So if you remember in our story, Corduroy had on some green overalls and he was missing one of his buttons. So we're gonna try and make ours look just like Corduroy. So we're gonna make him some green overalls using our green paper. An easy way to do this is you can kind of just take the body of your bear And on your green piece of paper, usually corduroys, they'll come up to they'll cover up most of your bear's chest, but they'll have a little bit coming at the top. So I like to just use my pencil and go around the outside, kind of trace a little bit. And that's a good kind of way for me to know how big to draw my overalls. So I'm going to give him some little parts at the bottom for his legs, just like this. And then I'm going to give him his straps. And if you remember from our story, like I said, one of his straps wasn't fastened. So I'm going to make one strap that goes up like this. And let's see, how big was our thing? Now one strap's going to come up to about there. And I'm going to make one of his straps not showing. So this is kind of a crazy looking shape, but again, yours is going to look a little different than mine because you have to trace your body for your bear, and your bear's body might be a little bit of a different size than mine, so that's okay. Use the body that you already made for your bear as a guide for how big to make your overalls. Now, I mentioned that I had some scissors at the beginning. You could use scissors for this part. I'm going to use scissors just to make it a little faster for you guys watching at home. But you could also tear your paper, just like we did before, using that same technique, because his overalls, I think, are kind of soft and fuzzy, so that would be okay as well. But now our next step is to cut this out. All right, just like before, when I put this on my paper, I'm going to put this side that has my lines on it facing the paper. That way my piece looks just a little bit neater. So now comes the fun part where we get to kind of glue everything down, make sure everything's in the right place. So kind of might have to adjust. This is why we didn't glue anything before this part, because you kind of want to wait to do all your gluing at the same time at the end. It makes things a little bit easier, a little bit neater. Okay, so now our bear shape is on our paper and I think we're ready to glue. So I'm going to start with the body in the middle. I'm going to use my liquid glue. First thing I'm going to glue down is my body. Okay. And then I think the next thing I'm going to add is my head. All right. And now I'm going to add my ears. And I like to kind of tuck my ears underneath. You see how I tucked that under my head? Just a little bit. I think it makes them look a little bit more realistic. Try not to use too much glue. You can use quite a bit, but you don't want to use so much that it's oozing out from underneath your paper. Otherwise, sometimes it can make your paper get kind of wrinkly. Okay, so the first things I did was my body, my head, and my ears. Now the next thing I really need to do is my overalls. Those are going to be next because we want to get those lined up nice so that we see a little bit of our bear's chest up here and we've got room for our feet to get attached down here. So for this part, I like to put it actually on the overalls. I think it makes it a little easier to get it lined up right. So I'm going to put a big circle of glue on my overalls, maybe a little bit on my legs and on this part. All right. And now I'm going to get it just lined up right. I'm going to drop it down. Perfect. There we go. All right, now he needs his arms. And I kind of, with the arms, I like to do just like I did with the ears and tuck them behind the body a little bit. Makes them look like they're really attached. Just like that. Now this one over here. Perfect. And now our feet. All right, and so now we've got a pretty awesome looking tear bear. We call it a tear bear because we tore it out instead of cutting it out. So it looks pretty good, but we're still missing a few things, right? We need to give him some eyes and a nose, and most importantly, we need to give him his buttons from the story. So that's why we have these buttons here. So what I think is a good way to do this, see if you can find two buttons that are kind of similar. I have two that are black that I'm going to use for my eyes because I think they'll be perfect for that. Oh, my glue got closed. All right, so I'm going to do two good dots of glue for my eyes. Stick those on there. All right. He's got some eyes now. And now for the buttons that go on his little overalls. So I have these two green buttons. They're not exactly the same, but they're kind of similar. That's what I'm going to use for his overalls. Now the one that he had in the story, I'm going to put up here. So the one that he actually had on his overalls, I'm going to put up here, right at the very top of this part. Now, remember, he had lost one of his buttons, so I think I'm going to put the other one down here on the ground so that it looks like it came right out of our story. All right, and if you have any extra buttons that you would like to use as a nose, you could absolutely do that. So I have another one here. I think I'm going to use this one to give him a nice nose. And as always, if you want to decorate your piece more, you can always do that with some markers. You could give your bear some ears, something for the inside of his ears, or a smile, but you can also stop if you like where it's at. So this is kind of what you end up with after you're all done. So our very, very last step is going to be to put our name on our artwork. As always, I'm going to put my name right down here in the bottom. And I am all done with my Terror Bear. I hope you had fun making our craft with us today. Terror Bears are such a cool activity, so I would love to see how yours came out. Please feel free to share them with us on Facebook or on Instagram, and have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next week here at Pre-K Art Day. Bye!